Mobility has always been more than movement. It has fueled freedom, forged connections, powered commerce, and driven progress throughout history. Moving Minds is a series about the people behind the systems, the visionaries, experts, and builders shaping the future of how we move. These are voices that often remain within specialist circles, yet their decisions quietly shape the systems we all depend on. Our mission is simple: to bring their stories, insights, and experiences to the wider mobility industry, giving stage to the thinking and decisions that will define the future of mobility.
Welcome back to Moving Minds, the series where we explore the minds powering, securing, and reshaping mobility. My guest today is Darren Shelcusky, a veteran technology leader who helped shape Ford's connected vehicle and product cybersecurity programs. Darren led as a manager for vehicle and connected cybersecurity at Ford, driving API security governance and the practices that support software-defined vehicles at scale. Today, he continues to support Ford as a senior consultant for vehicle and mobility cybersecurity, advising on secure vehicle-to-cloud architectures and compliance with frameworks like UNACE R155 and R156. Over his 35 plus years in automotive, Darren has championed API-first thinking, VSOC operations, and the shift from bolt-on controls to built-in security across web, cloud, mobile, and in-vehicle systems. Work that's earned him multiple connected vehicle patents and a reputation for turning security from a cost center into an enabler. In our conversation today, we'll get really practical, I guess. So what works, what doesn't, when you secure APIs at OEMs at scale, how to operationalize SDV security without stalling delivery, and how boards should think about root cause versus symptoms. Darren, it's a great honor and privilege to have you. Welcome to Moving Minds.
Thank you. So I'll just add one thing to your introduction. So actually, after 37 years at Ford, the end of August, I actually retired, and now I've started my own consulting company, Cyvantis LLC. So I'm still directly involved in the industry, but now I'm reaching my expand out not only to help Ford, but beyond Ford as well.
That's great. And I mean, 35 plus year in the automotive industry. Congratulations. I bet you have seen a lot. So let's dive into the questions that I have and which I'm keen to ask you. So let's start at the beginning. 35 plus years. What was it that first drew you into the world of automotive or mobility? And how did you end up or progress in that role?
Yeah, well, it was almost kind of preordained. So actually, my father was a mechanic, an auto mechanic, and I was good at math, so I wanted to study engineering. And most people don't realize it, but years ago, General Motors used to run their own college. It was called General Motors Institute. And literally, I turned 18, and a week later, I started working at GM in their engineering development program at General Motors Institute. So you can kind of think of it today kind of like an apprenticeship for engineers, in that, we would do 6 months of schooling academic, and 6 months of actually hands-on working, in my case, at a plant in Ohio. And it was kind of there that, in my working with GM back as a student, I was introduced at that time. It was the IBM PC, and it changed my mind. I saw quickly how this thing, because I'd never been exposed to computers prior to, could really help change, automotive. At that time, I was in manufacturing, so my initial focus was on manufacturing. But obviously, as my career, I expanded well beyond just manufacturing. So fast forward to 2005. I'm working at Ford. And Ford was going through, at that time, a pretty tough time, and they had instituted a Way Forward program. They picked a group of experts to help them get to market a connected vehicle. Today, people would know it as the Ford Sync, an infotainment system, but back then, there was no equivalent for it. So I was brought on as one of the team of experts, so to speak, and help, bring it to market. And the rest you'd say is history. Okay. Because what that initiative, that was honestly, it began to refine not only vehicle connectivity, but it set the stage, honestly, for how the software industry, because we partner with Microsoft, cybersecurity, it was the first vehicle that Ford did ever thought about cybersecurity in it, how to protect it, as well as automotive engineering would converge. So that's kind of what got me into this, was starting back, in 2005. And, I've been in connected vehicles since 2005. So it's 20 years now.
Yeah, that's a pretty long time. And I bet many people listening and watching, they say, wait a minute, automotive cybersecurity is maybe 8 to 10 years old. How can someone be in that domain for more than that? So, what is it about the work that you do then that gives you a sense of purpose or lasting impact?
Yeah. Well, for many, I'll just say the first question I had, for many companies in automotive, it may be 8 to 10 years old because honestly, most companies didn't pay attention to it until after the Charlie Miller hack. That's when people think automotive cybersecurity started. Well, I can't speak for every company, but at Ford, it started back in 2005. So I could say we were ahead of the game at the time, and and I think in many ways our maturity level, it shows in the thinking and how products get approached. So answering the question, what gives me a sense of purpose? Honestly, I said it fundamentally it's knowing that my work and the work that I do directly affects people, not just their data or their privacy, honestly, but their lives. Okay. Automobiles are safety critical devices. In automotive, everything we do with designs we make, honestly, to help ensure that a vehicle can't be remotely hijacked, the safety critical systems can't be overridden, they respond as intended, and that the trust that you as a consumer, with a vehicle isn't compromised. That when you drive your vehicle, it's going to behave, it's going to behave safely and securely. You know, it's very easy. And most people I talk to, when they ask you cybersecurity, it's like, well, it's abstract or just technical. But honestly, in automotive, it's deeply human. Okay. Everything we do, every line of code, every compliance review, every incident that we prevent, all the different things we do, honestly, contributes to a safer road for millions and millions of drivers. You know, and looking forward, the knowledge today that my diligence today, honestly, is preventing harm tomorrow. That's what keeps me motivated. I'm not just securing vehicles for today, we're preserving the confidence in the future mobility. So everything we do is about that. So you cannot separate safety and security. If you've ever seen in my presentations, I show it as a conjoined twins. Okay. And if you try to separate, that have a single heart, the heart is a customer. And if you separate conjoined twins with a single heart, you will kill one of them. So that's why I'm always prevalent. Safety and security, you can never separate the two. So that's my view of the world, and I view all my lens, and that's what motivates me is, in doing cybersecurity.
Yeah, and that goes way beyond just ticking the box of compliance, right? I introduced you with by saying that you help with the regulatory frameworks. There's plenty out there. It's not just the R155, but there's the Chinese, there's soon the Indian, there may be others. But at the end of the day, what you say is safety first, and safety first goes with security hand in hand, and it's something that is mission critical for someone who is operating in the industry. Now, that's a very powerful statement. So, can you share something about the job, your career, eventually that most people, even in our industry, would be surprised to learn, given you're such a veteran and you've probably seen everything in the industry so far?
Yeah, I probably the first thing, at least for me personally, when people view me, they view that, well, Darren's good at technologies and engineers, technologist. But I think honestly, most people would be surprised to learn how much of my job is about people, not just the technology. Yes, in cybersecurity, we work with things. We work with encryption, threat modeling, penetration testing. All the things that people would think of what cybersecurity does. But honestly, the real challenge, much harder, much more difficult, is aligning the hundreds of engineers, the suppliers, our partners, around a shared understanding and implementation of safety and security. You can, you've seen the old commercials, herding cats. In many ways, it's bringing all those people together, on the same mission. Mission is very, very important. And just like safety, cybersecurity isn't a single product or feature. It's a culture, just like safety. Safety, you can't build safety if people don't have the culture and the appreciation of what it means to be safe. Same thing for security. You can't build security without the people. No. So at the end of the day, a secure vehicle is a result of many small daily decisions, okay, made by, programmers, engineers who think about safety and security as part of their craft. Okay. So short of it, my job is just as much about communication and trust building as it is about technical defense. And it's not downplaying any of the technical defense. That's obviously very, very important. But there's a thing I always tell people. The surprising truth is the strongest firewall for a vehicle isn't digital, it's human collaboration. That's the key. The other thing is too, to add to that, is people are surprised by how broad a cybersecurity professional perspective has to be. So if you think about it, our responsibility extends across the entire vehicle ecosystem, every domain, every interface, every connection. And if you understand the automotive industry, most teams specialize in a single system. I do brake, I do engine controls or a module. Okay, they're very specialized. So cybersecurity needs to understand them all, and how do they work together? Because that's what the bad guys will take advantage of, those connections, those interfaces. If those aren't secure or there's changes in trust boundaries, that's where the bad guys will come in. So by taking this end-to-end view, it allows us to see the effects of every decision, from software architecture to over-the-air updates. You really have to look and have a systems engineering point of view. So, and the funniest thing is, I said, when we collaborate with the engineering teams, Ford, they're still amazed by how deeply we understand the full vehicle, not just from a cybersecurity perspective, but from a system perspective. So it's really, that's the probably thing that most people don't understand. You really need to be broad. In many ways, if you've seen other presentations I do, I call it, we build unicorns. A unicorn is a mythical creature, okay, that doesn't exist. But if you find one, it's a treasure. So, and it won't go into this, but I go around, and part of my job is building unicorns. How do you take a good engineer, a good software person, and turn them into a cybersecurity person? So, but that's for another interview on how to build a unicorn.
Yeah, that's a quite interesting answer. So definitely, I'm not surprised that it involves a lot of people. But what is interesting is that you're saying, in terms of managing cybersecurity for a large OEM, in your case, it's more on getting things done together, because the disciplines that are needed in order to do the right safety and protection level are such that it really comes down to the ability to communicate well and go on the same mission towards that same goal, to make products very safe and very secure as much as humanly possible, right? So now, in your view, is there anything else that, in terms of misunderstood challenges, you would see in the mobility or automotive space?
Again, I don't think people understand. Again, when you get into technology, there's challenges around, take electrification, for example. We, the auto industry, can build great electric vehicles, but the problem is we don't own the infrastructure. Okay, so all the societal things, the regulations around whether it's air pollution or whatnot, The electrical grid doesn't have the capacity to be able to absorb this many vehicles and all these things like that. Same thing with autonomous vehicles. The biggest thing about autonomous vehicles isn't the vehicle itself; it's product liability. Are we as and I'm going to say when an accident happens. Okay, it's not if, it's when. Who's at fault? Was it truly a result of negligence? Or was it something else? So that's probably the biggest thing. There's societal things that are holding back these advancements in autonomous and electrification and whatnot. So, and it's things that we can try to influence as an industry, but we don't own it. These are society things, and it takes multiple players, multiple partners. Just like building a vehicle takes all these people to come together. It really takes society coming together to focus on the mission of safer cities, autonomous mobility. That's a mission for society. Electrification, that's a mission for society, which the auto industry has a part to play, but we're not the only player.
Yeah, and when you say insurance, that actually takes a view outside of the company perimeter. You were talking about how important it is to communicate internally. If I understand you correctly now, that is expanding if we talk about autonomous. So it's bringing in other players such as insurance for assessing the risk of those autonomous vehicle. And also to maybe if we even further expand supply chain or other third parties, if we think for a second on smart cities, which there's way more players in that connected ecosystem that need to be part of that safety and security posture and assessment, right?
Absolutely. So it goes back to my previous answer is the challenge isn't technology. We understand the technology. It's human. Pulling all the people together to get, as the military calls it, military, they have a mission, and everyone is involved in the mission and everyone understands what the mission is. And don't think we're there as a society yet on autonomous, mobility or electrification. I think different people have different missions. So I think the key and the challenge is getting everyone to agree that this is our mission as a society.
Mm. Now we talked about the potential misunderstood challenges. In your view, if we look on what are important but maybe undervalued drivers in our industry today, what would you say these are?
Well, I think I'll expand on what I was just talking about. Again, it's not building the technology, but integrating it securely, reliably, and at scale. Again, as I talked about, electrification, autonomy, connectivity they're seen as technical hurdles. But really, like I mentioned, the true obstacles are, human, systemic, infrastructure, building out, if you look in the US right now, they're looking at grid capacity and the deliverability to deliver it and charging infrastructure, how far can I drive a vehicle? Will there be a charger available? These are things that, again, are beyond just an automaker just as Ford to resolve. Okay. Data privacy, ethical response, the ethical collaboration across governments, industry, and communities. Just because where I live around me, they want to put a data center in for AI. It helps a lot of things, but a lot of the community don't want it. So you're going to have these tensions, between is this progress or is it the progress that everyone's on the same mission that they want, or are there multiple missions? It goes back to that that fundamental problem again. And I believe success won't belong to the fastest innovators, but ultimately to those who unite people, institutions, and technologies. Ultimately, and when we do that, then we can create a safe, trusted, and sustainable future for mobility. So that is the most misunderstood challenge I think it is today. Just say automaker, just do it. Well, we'd love to be able to do it.
It's easier said than done, right? This is what it comes down to. Now, if you look at your role in the last maybe 3 to 5 years, and certainly there has been a maturity on the OEM side, the supplier side, so the industry has made progress towards achieving the safety and security goals. Um, Specific to the role that you had, now, what do you think? How has it evolved? And on the other hand, what will it demand next?
Yeah. Well, I think over the if they look back the 5 years, it has been a maturation. Cybersecurity at its start was primarily a technical function. Okay. Protect the vehicle, protect the asset, whatnot. And it still is that, but it's gotten much beyond that now. It really is strategic, and it's just as important, no different than safety. So going back, safety and security now are synonymous. You can't have a vehicle without either of them. Because cybersecurity, as I mentioned, it spans the entire vehicle ecosystem. And if you what does that mean? It's a fancy word, but basically protection into software inside the vehicle and outside the vehicle, the supply chains, customer trust and experience. All those things come into play when you that have changed over there. Worrying about those things. So it's no longer just about securing a single module in a vehicle. As I going back to the herding cats, it's about shaping the processes, the culture, and the resilience across the organization. So that's strategic. That's not just just go secure this module and you're done. If I had to looking ahead, I think it's going to demand even greater foresight and agility. What do I mean? We have to anticipate threats before they emerge. Okay, AI is coming in, a wonderful thing, but a whole new set of threats coming from AI. As an example, securely increasing software-defined and autonomous platforms. Again, more to platforms. Software-defined vehicles are great in these platforms, but with great power, comes great responsibility. And also goes aligning cybersecurity with our business strategies, the regulatory requirements that we have to meet, and honestly, customer expectations. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about the customers and meeting their needs, with the products that we build. So the next phase will require leadership, cross-functional collaboration, and basically unwavering commitment to build trust and mobility, not just technology. So if you're in cybersecurity, you view yourself just as a technologist, there's a place for you, but it's not in leadership. I mean, don't get me wrong. People in doing pen testing, doing that level of work will always be there, but taking it to the next level is more than just doing a pen test.
Yeah, I hear you, and I think the next few years will be. You mentioned AI, and will certainly shed some light on your perspective on that. But before that, I wanted to ask you in terms of your specific mindset or habit when things get uncertain or even overwhelming, and you mentioned about the complexity in the organization, but also in the surrounding ecosystem to make things work right. Talking about Darren specifically, what mindset or habit do you rely when things in fact go uncertain or are becoming overwhelming?
Every day. I have a principle, and I take it from the medical, specifically the Hippocratic Oath. Do no harm. So as an engineer, I take that very seriously, because think about it. I mean, every day you trust engineers. I'll use an example. When you go out in your car, you're driving, you trust that it's not going to, fall apart. Okay. I make this analogy with people. Think about it. You're driving a vehicle that has controlled explosions and having deadly gases coming out the tailpipe. Just in an automobile. You're driving over a bridge and you hope that bridge isn't going to fall down. You take an elevator up, you hope it's not going to fall down. So in engineering, just like in medical, there's a lot of trust. So I took the heart at beginning engineering, that oath, to do no harm. Okay, because we hold a responsibility to protect human life and trust through the decisions I make, the decisions our profession makes. So, but today's digital ecosystem, harm can be different. It can occur not only through active failure, but through neglect. Okay, that's very much important. failure to act can result in harm. And I joke with people. I said, dealing with engineers, and if I had a nickel for every time engineers, when we're reviewing products, and they ask a question, that'll never happen, or why would anyone ever do that? And I say, you're asking the wrong question. I said, what happens when this occurs? So just by changing the question, you can change the perspective. So what does that mean for cybersecurity? I now, and we as a profession have to anticipate risk, design for resilience, resist the shortcuts, that can compromise safety or, just for the sake of speed or cost. So there's a tension that's always going to be there because, at the end of the day, getting to market, speed, cost, timing, quality are very, very important. And there's a tension with safety and security that are the actions we're going to do, potentially, could they cause harm? So ultimately, at the end of the day, our progress is serving humanity by balancing creativity with care, capability, responsibility, and ambition with accountability. That's, and that's where the oath comes in. You always ask the question. It's like, will this cause harm in some way? Because ultimately our profession is to do no harm.
Yeah, I truly believe your analogies in the way to make this very simplistic and describe very complicated and complex things in a way even in a way that people can picture the analogies like what you just mentioned with the oath, and I think it's really fascinating. The other thing is, do you think that based on what you just said, people can speak up in terms of, hey, we're not ready yet to move to SOP? Is that something that you would encourage people to do as a matter of making sure that products are not behind schedules, but product adhere to certain standards? It's just something that can be realistically be pushed in today's environment.
If the company is committed to it, yes. There were times where there's a result of cybersecurity action taken, that vehicle programs were delayed because there were things that needed to be corrected before they could go to launch. And does that make people happy? Does it make it your friend? Are there impacts? Well, beyond that, to the company, yes. But if a company is committed to it, they will allow those things, obviously, with the data and showing, like any a corporation. If you look at a corporation, its leadership and its board of directors has one purpose, and they're to manage risk for the company.
Mm-hmm.
And risk comes in all different kinds. It could be financial risk, it could be talent, it could be product risk, it could be cybersecurity risk, and whatnot. So the leadership of the company's job is to manage the risk. And our challenge is to present that risk, with data in an actionable way to show, what are the potential consequences and the likelihood of this happening. So learning how to speak, to the board, to the leadership in the language that they understand is very, very important. Not just saying, well, they're going to have this stuff and they could do this thing. It's like, they could care less about the particulars of it. They want to understand, is the risk, what does it take to achieve it? What would be the impact of the company as a professional? What is your point of view on this type of thing? So yes, I mean, that is very, very important. And I can't speak for all companies, but I know that my time at Ford as an organization took it very, very seriously.
Yeah, it's good to know that this is something that is not just a theory, but you mentioned the way to communicate internally. I guess it's part of the ecosystem to build a trust within the company that people know what they're talking about. And if someone is suggesting that it needs more time to make things more safe and secure, this is something that is ultimately the mission of a company to deliver the products and the promises that this would do no harm. So appreciate these type of insights. And again, looking back at your career and the impact that you've had, What are you most proud of? Big or small, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, in my case, it's impacting people's lives. So let me explain that. Over my career at Ford, honestly, I've had the privilege of working with many, many young engineers in their career. Ford has a program called the FCG program, or Ford College Graduate, and it's for young talent who's recently graduated from college or with several years' experience. So in many ways, they're green engineers. They don't know what they don't know. And over my career, I've had the privilege to guide over 100 plus young employees. Honestly, shaping how they view how to approach engineering, what true success is, and what really matters. Okay, to be able to do that. And because I've been there, many years, I watched many of them grow into leadership roles. Some of them forward, some of them left and beyond, but growing into mature leaders, driving either Ford or the companies that they went to. When I recently retired from Ford, I mentioned it at the end of August. I put an announcement on LinkedIn, and I was shocked. I mean, many of my former employees, shared heartfelt tributes on LinkedIn, reflecting the positive impact that I had on their lives. In many ways, it was very humbling and enlightening. So it's kind of like, I view it this way: if you got a chance to, you died and you read your eulogy, people were writing about you. I got a slight glimpse of that, through that. And so the point is, never underestimate the influence that you can have on the people you lead or collaborate with. As the impact you have will extend farther than beyond what you can see, and may impact people a lot more than you realize. So that is the most promising. Yes, lots of technologies, patents, and all those. As good as those things are, developing people, it to me is the most satisfying.
Yeah, and I can certainly understand why that is the case. Now, we talked about or alluded to AI, the thing about AI, so we cannot not talk about it. Um, how do you think it is impacting cybersecurity leaders in OEMs or in mobility, in automotive in general? And do you think that AI tools that are out there have changed your perspective on that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, if you see my recent LinkedIn, I show a cartoon, about, and it shows a person asking AI, holding up a mushroom, "Can I eat this
Mm.
mushroom?" And the AI answers yes. And then the next picture is them laying in a hospital bed, hooked up to, medical equipment and IV and whatnot. And it's like, do you want to learn about poisonous mushrooms? So so that kind of gets to me. That's the state of AI today. So to me, that kind of puts in perspective. It's become both an accelerator, you know, as well as a disruptor. So what I mean by that, on one hand, in the cybersecurity specter, it can amplify our ability to detect anomalies, analyze mass amounts of data, potentially predict threats before they occur or before. Okay, but it's also changed the way I think about risk. Because at the end of the day, context matters. Okay, because how you ask the question sometimes, how cybersecurity may respond. Not cybersecurity, AI may respond completely differently on just how you ask the question, to it. So the other thing that comes in too, these same tools that help us defend, we're already starting to see they're becoming weaponized. From generating malware to mimicking human behavior. Gen AI, I guarantee if someone sees my pictures and gets enough of my voice, they can make a digital version of Darren if they want to do it. For social engineering and all those type of things. So from a cybersecurity perspective, it's forced us to expand our definition of cyber threats to include the AI itself, as a source of the threats. Okay. But going back to the mushroom analogy, it's reminding me that technology can never replace human judgment. For as bad as we are, as good as we are as humans, okay, we're not machines. Okay. And we see things differently than a machine does. Okay. We still need, for AI, we will still need human oversight, ethics, and accountability to ensure that, automation, agentic AI serve safely, not just expedient. So going back to all the safety and secure and whatnot, while AI changes how I work, I use it to generate code and whatnot, and it's very, very helpful. It also reinforces why I work to make sure that innovation, such as AI, remains safe and trustworthy. So there's a lot of trust put into AI that is unfounded, quite frankly, and it scares me, that people don't understand. So that's going to be part of my job. If you've seen, I've been starting to become an evangelist now for security of AI because, in one of the posts I put in there, basically I made the comment that AI will amplify every shortcoming you have in your cybersecurity defenses in your company when you adopt it. So consider that.
Yeah, so it comes down to human discretion at the end of the day, and we saw in the last couple of months a lot of publicly exposed posts about OEMs that have been affected about ransomware, etc., etc. So, do you think that in terms of the potential scale of incidents or vulnerabilities, AI is the perfect machine to make sure that we need to be aware not to miss any holes in our security framework out there in order to make the product secure and safe in the first place?
It's a piece of the puzzle. I will never put all my eggs in one basket. In cybersecurity, we have a thing called defense in depth. Okay. And you never rely on a single technology, a single thing to protect, and for those who don't understand what that is, a common analogy is you think back in the days of the king would have a castle. The castle would have the high walls, the drawbridge, the moat around it. Okay, guys up top, dumping tar and shooting arrows and inner chambers and all these things into it. And so think of that like as a defense in depth. To get to the prize, the king, you got to get through all those defenses. Cybersecurity is no different, and AI is part of a defense in depth, but there's still place for traditional rule-based things. I don't need AI to tell me that says, Darren lives in the US, but someone from Russia is logging into his account. I don't need AI to tell me that that's not a good thing. Rule-based things still can work, be able to do that. So I think it's a combination of choosing the things that AI can do where it requires a lot of data and judgment, and don't try to make it, it'll do everything, because, in many cases, it's the wrong tool for the job.
Mhm. I understand. Let's look at the future. Let's look ahead, and let me ask you, what excites you most if you think of the next 5 years in mobility and automotive when it comes, obviously, to cyber?
Well, again, I think it's going on the AI. It's a convergence of safety, software, and I call AI intelligence. Okay. People have known that the industry for the last 25 years has been evolving from what was primarily mechanical engineering. And don't get me wrong, cars still has many, many, many mechanical parts that you have to work and deal with, but to digital ecosystems. So those are the control systems, the offboard systems, all the things like that. And this is where software, AI, and data integrity form the background of that trust. So how do I make sure that when I hook into those things, that they're trusted? So this shift, challenges the industry and cybersecurity to rethink everything. Again, AI is a good thing that, AI is not deterministic. I mean, engineers love determinism. They have to. You're doing a system, it needs to behave the same way. If I'm doing safety critical, I have to know how it behaves. Well, now with AI, you kind of throw it out the window because it's not deterministic, it's probabilistic. So at this point. So so this forces us everything now to rethink how we validate everything. How do you validate code, architect for over their updates, supply chain insurance, it's kind of moving cybersecurity now, what for many corporations is a back office function, to the front. It's not a back office thing when you're talking about all these things of protecting the ecosystem, third parties, SaaS things, you name it, because all those are part now of the customer experience in driving a vehicle. So So the more digital the vehicle comes, the more our work defines how safe, resilient, and trustworthy that the future will be. And I just see more digital, not less, in the next 5 years. And to me, it's exciting as a technologist, as a person, but I view it as a generational opportunity to shape the future mobility, quite frankly. I mean, this is, a turn of the crank, as far as technology and how we integrate it, how we protect it, how we secure it, it's going to truly impact the future mobility going forward.
Yeah, certainly incredible times that we're in the industry. Now, we talked about what excites you, but is there maybe anything that keeps you up at night because of all the things that we discussed about? So defense in depth is certainly one topic, but again, looking at AI, and we don't know how much this can be weaponized. Is there anything that really scares you looking into the future?
Well, it's something that scared me in the past and it still scares me today. One word: complexity.
Mm.
So vehicles now, again, they were standalone items, air gapped and everything like that. They were a vehicle. People, they did what they do. You drive me from point A to B safely, comfortably, reliably. But now they're part of a vast digital ecosystem. That includes, the cloud services, mobile apps, suppliers, infrastructure, you name it. I mean, it's just exploded the things now that can impact a vehicle or driving. And so every new interface, every new system, every new tool expands the attack surface. And going back to the systems engineering, the weakest link can be anywhere in this whole chain of technology and systems. So, and what worries me most is the gap between innovation speed and cybersecurity maturity. AI is a good example of that. People are out there at speed of AI, but the security really scares me. And I not only the auto industry, but use as a prediction. You're going to see a lot of bad things. People misusing AI here. In the next couple of years. The other thing gets into consider is vehicles become more autonomous and softer defined. A single vulnerability could have consequences not measured in data breaches, but in lives. If that can impact the safety, yeah, it's one thing to have your identity stolen in a data breach. It's another thing to be injured, as a result of something. So that's what keeps me up. This complexity, managing this complexity. The responsibility, to make sure that in our pursuit of mobility, convenience, the convenience automation never outruns our ability and our commitment to safety, security, and trust. So it's again balancing that. So that complexity, because the complexity is just getting more and more. So and you have to deal with it.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we can expect from moving forward in our industry. That complexity will for sure not become less, but eventually become more. Now, we've come to the last question that I have here today in Moving Minds for you. You mentioned about how humbling it was or still is when you get the feedback from people that had the fortune to meet or maybe being even mentored by you as a young professional. Now, if there would be something that you could whisper, the one tip to every young person who is keen and willing to enter this industry, what would it be?
Yeah, we're going to continue on my theme that I've talked about. In automotive, safety and security is an abstract. It's personal. Okay, there's people behind everything. Never forget that every line of code, every ECU you deal with, every CAN message, anything you do touches a human life. Okay, okay. You're not just protecting data or the company. You're protecting families on the road. Okay, our industry is no longer just about the physical vehicle, as important as they are, and and that's what people buy. It's about software now, AI, customer experiences. So to succeed, how do I succeed in this world? You have to master interdisciplinary skills. I mentioned earlier how much we know about the entire ecosystem, the vehicles and whatnot, as a cybersecurity engineer building these unicorns. You have to brace ambiguity. It's like things aren't always, it's risk, and risk is nothing more than likelihood in the outcome. Okay. And it's not always going to be as simple. There's going to be things where, there's judgment calls as what's the likelihood? What's the outcome? You're going to make, professional judgments on those types of things. Stay curious. The best people who worked with me and the people that I mentioned, mentored and all, that was probably my biggest advice to them. Stay curious. It will serve you well in your career. You want to experiment, fearlessly question the old paradigms because, it's changed. And in my view, the best professionals are disciplined, humble, and like I said, endlessly curious. Because as vehicles become more connected and autonomous, our learning never stops, and your learning will never stop. So, 2 words: stay curious, and you will do well.
I like that. Darren, thank you so much for sharing your time. I think your insights are unique, and I'm sure you continue to inspire young professionals, not only young professionals. I'm sure the vast experience that you have is something that is really beneficial to the industry. It helped to shape the future of mobility for sure. It will continue to shape the future of mobility. Your vision is exactly what we're looking here at Moving Minds, and you are certainly one of the voices that needs to be heard. So again, thanks so much for your time, and good luck whatever comes next.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much.
If today's conversation offered a new perspective on what drives mobility, we'd love for you to follow the series, share it, and tell us your thoughts. You'll find more episodes with the people shaping what's next. One question, one insight, one decision at a time. Until next time, keep moving forward.